Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a really dramatic military operation, but we're going to look at it through three completely different lenses. We'll start with the official story, then we'll peer back the curtain on a hidden geopolitical game, and finally we'll explore a call for a totally new kind of global leadership. All right, let's jump right in. It all starts with this. A pretty stunning announcement detailing the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. And that quote, it really sets the stage perfectly for the official story we were all told. A story of swift, decisive action and, well, American justice. So to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll cover that official narrative. Then we're going to peel back the layers to what some sources say is the real motive. After that, we'll look at a pretty radical call for a new spiritual approach. And we'll wrap it all up with a diplomatic proposal that tries to connect everything. First up, the public justification. The why that was given for this pretty extraordinary military action. The official narrative paints a very clear picture of a necessary intervention against what was called a dangerous criminal enterprise. Now, the official line is that this didn't just happen overnight, not at all. It was the result of years of really serious accusations against Maduro and his inner circle. We're talking massive corruption, international drug trafficking. He was basically being painted not as a political leader, but as the kingpin of a massive criminal network. And the accusations were considered so severe that they led to this, a staggering $50 million bounty for his arrest. Think about that. That's not just a number. It's a huge signal of just how seriously U.S. law enforcement was taking the situation. The operation itself was codenamed Absolute Resolve, and man, it was presented as this flawless, overwhelming show of American military power. The press briefing described it as a spectacular assault carried out with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. Okay, so that's the story they're telling us. But, with these kinds of official stories, there's almost always another layer, right? Beyond the whole narco-terrorism angle, our sources point to a deeper geopolitical motive. And this is where the story shifts from a question of morality to one of pure, hard strategy. This different perspective is framed through something the source material calls the logic of power. So what does that actually mean? Well, the core idea is that for the world's most powerful nations, survival and staying on top comes first. It means that controlling strategic resources isn't just a nice-to-have, it's seen as an absolute necessity for survival. And that need drives decisions that can look pretty ruthless from the outside. So what's the strategic asset at the heart of all this? It all comes down to one thing: oil. The source argues that even though Venezuela has these enormous reserves, huge chunks of its energy were reportedly being funneled directly to America's biggest strategic rivals, Russia and China. And here's where it gets really mind-bending. This isn't just about fuel for cars or power for our homes. The source material connects this energy to the future. The argument is that massive amounts of energy are the essential fuel for the next great global race, the race to develop artificial superintelligence, or ASI. So from that perspective, letting all that energy go to your rivals isn't just an economic loss, it's a direct threat to your dominance in the next technological age. So there you have it, two totally different explanations laid out side by side. On one hand, you've got the public moral reason, fighting drug trafficking and getting justice. And on the other, you have this hidden strategic imperative, lock down energy resources to win the future of technology. Okay, so we've got the official story and the hidden story of raw power. But our sources don't just stop there. They introduce a third, and I gotta say, pretty unconventional way of looking at all this. One that basically says, let's throw out these old power games and try a spiritual framework instead. This third path comes from an organization with a pretty unique name, the United Universe Church Galaxy Academy, or UUCGA for short. And they offer a completely different lens for viewing these world events, one that isn't based on military might or backroom deals, but on a whole other kind of understanding. At the heart of their whole philosophy is this concept they call mature empathy. It's a tricky one, but think of it like this. It's the ability to understand the cold, hard logic behind why something happens, like that logic of power we just talked about, without just slapping a good or evil label on it, and crucially, without losing your sense of compassion. Now, they're not just being idealistic here. The argument is that this is actually the most pragmatic way forward. The claim is that the old ways of constant conflict just weaken everybody, and a new kind of leadership is desperately needed to get us through these incredibly tense times.
So the big question is, how does this actually work? I mean, it's a great idea, but what does it look like in the real world? This brings us to a really specific and direct appeal for collaboration, one that tries to build a bridge between that raw power and a more, well, an enlightened way of doing things.
This appeal comes straight from the UUCGA's leader, a figure who goes by the name Kukulkan. And it's on a webpage that's, get this, addressed directly to U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. And the page itself is this fascinating mix of topics, connecting things like the military-industrial complex with ideas like escaping the matrix and spiritual leadership. It's a lot to take in. And out of all of that, a really specific, really audacious plan emerges. They call it the diplomatic trinity. The proposal is a direct call for the foreign ministers of the United States, Russia, and Ukraine to come together to unite. And the goal? It's nothing less than to broker peace and pull the world back from the brink of a potential thermonuclear war.
And the way they talk about this, it's not your typical diplomatic memo. It's presented as this urgent, almost spiritual call to action. I mean, the language here frames diplomacy not just as a political task, but as a mission with a divine purpose that needs to happen for all of us.
So where does that leave us? After digging through the military action, the geopolitics, and this spiritual philosophy, what's the big takeaway from all of this? It really boils down to these three completely different layers, three different stories to explain the exact same event. You have the official story, driven by justice, then you have the hidden game of power, driven by strategy, and finally you have this proposed spiritual path, driven by a call for empathy and a new way of leading. And at the end of the day, this whole analysis leaves us with a massive question for the future. As our world gets more complicated and the stakes get higher and higher, is the future just going to be another battle of raw power? Or is there room for something new, a synthesis of hard-nosed strategy and a deeper, more connected spirit? Right now, that path is still unwritten.